2. I think we're live. Can you see me on video? It's a bit delay. So hey everybody, I think we're live at this point. This is the office. It's not super exciting, but it's clean. I've got a whiteboard up here. So we're gonna do a Q&A session. You guys can type in your questions into the comments field. If you have questions about setting up your machine, anything about laying out bends, questions about machine capacity, pre-purchase, anything you think the general public or the audience might want to know, this is the place to ask that so we can get that conversation flowing and get you guys the information you need. If you have any just basic conversational stuff, you can just ask that too. The worst I'll say is I'm not telling you. I'm going to turn off our air conditioner. It's literally a few inches away from the camera. That'll be a lot quieter. So Josh is behind camera, and he is going to be the one who reads me your questions. And until we start getting questions, I'm just going to start trying to sell you guys stuff. I'm going to show you the stuff we've come out with kind of recently, some simple upgrades for the machine, being of course our Model 600 bender and stuff like that. But I see some comments rolling in, so likely there'll be something relevant that you guys will have to ask.
Lots of love from the people on the page.
Love from people on the page. That's awesome. We're super glad to have you guys here for our first Q&A session, by the way. Thank you all for tuning in. And like any good engineer, which is a nerdy engineer, I've got tons of colors to draw with, so I can explain stuff with pictures, because I love pictures. In the meantime, I want to show you guys some other good stuff. Recently, most of you, since you're probably our more loyal followers, already know about this stuff, but we've got finally in stock now our super cool degree indicators. There's a piece of copper on the machine that helps us keep the price of the basic kit, $725 with the die. We've now got these super pretty CNC cut degree indicators that have 2 different pointers depending on your height and how you want to look at them to help you with parallax and accuracy reading the analog degree wheel on the machine for reading bend angle. They're super awesome. They come with some custom-made hardware and springs and stuff we had to order to make them fit on the machine nicely. And they do hold a zero really cleanly, easy to adjust, they stay put, and they're 19 bucks. So, of course, made in the USA, like just about everything.
We have a question. Do you guys have any plans or have considered manufacturing a box and pan brake?
Box and pan brake?
Mid-level machines in the market.
There's very few mid-level machines?
Yeah.
Who asked that question?
That'd be Jeremiah Johnson.
Jeremiah Johnson wants to know if I'm sure you guys heard Josh read me the question, but mid-level box and pan brake, I agree. I've won one in the past. I don't have one, either personal shop or here at RogueFab, and they are extremely nice to have. We do not have plans to make a box and pan brake right now. I have actually started a little bit of a design on one, but it's been a few years. So sheet metal tooling is sensible to go along with our existing product line of tube forming tools and tube chassis fabrication accessories and fixturing. So at some point we will likely make a box and pan brake. It might have an option to be a cornice brake as well, which is just a less option, box and pan kind of. So that does make sense. I was working on basically a 3-in-1 or 4-in-1 machine. It was supposed to be a slip roll, roll bender, and box and pan kind of combined into one. But getting the material out of it started to become too challenging for the design. We ended up having to focus more on production work and tubing bender development. So that is the long story, Jeremiah, of why we don't have one and why we're not currently working on one. But it's something that I'd love to develop and sell if time allows.
Mandrel bending 3, 4, and 5-inch tubing.
Mandrel bending 3, 4, and 5-inch tubing. Who asked that one?
Mr. Doug Parsons, I'm talking to him.
Doug wants to know about mandrel bending the big stuff. So our bender does mandrel bend up to 2-inch. It uses bullet mandrels. So I think I've got one here. Not one of these. No, I don't have one handy. But basically, your bending die hangs out right here. I should draw this bigger. So this is a bending die, not drawn round. Tubing gets bent, comes off. Your clamp would go right here. So this is going this way. Your mandrel sits inside the material and just holds it open while it's being bent. You guys already know this. Doug probably already knows this. A wiper die is used on really advanced mandrel benders, and a wiper die goes back here. That pin's garbage. A wiper die goes right there. What it stops is the wrinkle from forming right here. tube wants to wrinkle when it's in compression, right behind where the bend starts. And our machine does not have a wiper die. Machines that are $250,000, $500,000, like a Pines No. 2 or Carolina, huge ones, they have that. That's not the only reason they're $250,000 to $500,000, but it's one of them. They also have a much more advanced mandrel system that puts a lot more stuff in here that actually travels with the bend and gets retracted out. Ours gets retracted out too, but it doesn't have all that fancy stuff going on. All this, rigidity, size, and CNC controls are what make a machine cost $500,000, and Doug, that is why our machine will not do it, is because it's nowhere near that size. Generally, you double the radius, you at least double the bending, you double the diameter of the material, you at least double the bending radius, and you quadruple the machine weight. You have to do that with our machine like 1.5 to 2 times to up to 5 inch. So then the machine would be exponentially larger, more complicated, and heavy and expensive than ours, which is unfortunately substantial. I know it's tempting to bend 5-inch diesel catback in your own garage, but those machines run on 3-phase power, 20 plus horsepower of it, take up a huge amount of space, require rigging to install, and they're seriously more expensive than a house in almost every neighborhood in the country. So they're tremendously expensive. Our webpage, if you go to RogueFab.com, click on Tech, and just Bender Tech, it's our general introduction to tubing benders, has a actually pretty decent explanation of the different types of tubing benders that are out there, and includes an explanation including relative starting price points for mandrel benders of certain diameters, including ours, and then 2 above it that are for 3-inch and I think 4-inch. I think 4-inch starts at about $112,000. It's the cheapest you can buy a machine for that. And tooling and die sets for those for each specific size and wall thickness are usually like $5 to $15,000 per die set. So it's not to be dabbled in, unfortunately. And Doug, you might be planning this for a massive production, running 3 shifts a day. I don't know. I'm not trying to condescend you.
All right, so we got John. He's asking, what's some good advice for first using the bender? He just got this.
John, if time lapse and all that stuff allows, let me know if you're using Bentech or not. That'll change my suggestion. I'm going to assume you're not using Bentech. My first suggestion for John, first project to do with his bender, is make yourself layout tools. So most people here doing motorsports work, here being just our customers, and if you look at the inside of a car, don't tell me this does not look like your Nova, because I know it looks exactly like this. This is your car. Your B-pillar is one of the more challenging parts to make, and that's the part that goes up to the shoulder of the driver, across the headliner, and back down the passenger side down.
No Bentech.
No Bentech. It's John, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, John's not using Bentech, that's fine. So the easiest way to do this is the way I laid it out for me, is without Bentech, is the way I laid it out in our roll cage video. But I took a piece of bent tubing and held it up to the headliner of the car. Happened to be a Volvo S60. And that piece was just a bend with the radius I was going to use, with a tail that's the bend offset for the machine. It's the distance from the clamp block that started the bend. That part's kind of irrelevant. You can calculate that part anyway. But what we're going to do is take 2 of these bends, put them up here just by hand. You might have to use a friend if you're going to do both of them. Just take a tape measure. We want to know the distance from the start of this bend to the start of that bend. That length of straight tubing is very easy to back out the clamp block offset to make that exact thing in the bender. And you usually bend from the center out, so your center line is going to be right there in the middle, and it's symmetrical. You can do the same thing by just putting a piece of tape on the headliner and measuring one side and doubling it, but you're going to lay the tube out from the middle to one side, usually symmetrical. Usually you just lay out half, do the same thing on the other side. But the first thing I would do is make that piece you hold up to the headliner. It's a good way to test if the material works in the machine. It's not going to bend a 6-foot stick you want to keep in half with maybe a bad bend because you set the machine up wrong. It will be a useful piece you'll always use. I like to do those test bends for doing layout work in a 30, a 60, and a 90. You may also want a 45, but the 90 is the most useful because you can take this layout bend and it can be bent too far and it wouldn't actually change where it fits the headliner. Once you move it to that corner and it stops when it hits the kind of wall of the car, if it's bent further than it needs to be, you're going to get the same measurement anyway. And then use a protractor to measure the actual bend angle, difference between that and that, which I exaggerated. It's not 45 degrees, it's only 70.
All right. Green Mirror's asking, what should one know about bending different metals, mild steel, chromoly, and stainless steel?
Okay, asking about mild steel, chromoly, and stainless steel, I'm going to add aluminum and titanium and copper to that list. But first, the easy 3, the ones that are steels. Chromoly is stronger than mild steel, they generally bend the same in terms of minimum wall thickness and propensity to wrinkle, like how likely it is to wrinkle and instead of a bend when you get thin. Overall bend quality, like how bad you'll deal stretch and pull it in when you're bending. So those two, since our machine is very, very, very stout, we don't differentiate between them. Our capacity charts just say carbon steel, and that includes 4130, 1020 DOM, ERW. ERW is more fickle. Our capacity chart explains that and why. So it's not as consistent. Stainless, though, is different, very different from the regular, what we call carbon steels. Most stainlesses are like T304, T306, 314, 316. Those ones all like to wrinkle. They're not generally as hard to bend in terms of just stiffness of the material, so it's not a capacity issue of the machine, but they like to wrinkle. So you look at our capacity chart, it's almost exactly just one wall thickness up for whatever the minimum is for carbon steel to get to the minimum for stainless steel. And then the ones I added, titanium, aluminum, and copper. Copper likes to wrinkle, and it's very low tensile, so it rips easy, really hard to bend. Titanium has a really high tensile strength, so it will almost never crack when you're bending it. But it does have some sensitivity to wrinkling, and it's made in very thick wall thicknesses, which makes it challenging to bend without having problems with the wall ratio, which is explained in our tech section on our webpage as well. And the last one I wanted to add was aluminum. Aluminum is decent on tensile strength, but does crack very, very easy. It's heat treated in the T6 Emperor that everybody buys it in, to the point that it is extremely brittle. It does not cold work well, and you have to generally bend it on a pretty broad radius to not have it crack. Square tubing with aluminum is even worse than round tubing. So
we got a question from Wes here.
Wes has a question.
Do you have any new attachments coming out for the mandrel bender, i.e. sliding rotary tube clamp or removable stop for faster setups?
Removable stop for faster setups. I'd like you to clarify that one. I don't know what you mean by removable stop for faster setups. We don't have anything planned really to add to the mandrel that I can discuss in public. I told you guys that there might be some stuff that I would just decline to answer. There is some things we're planning with the mandrel that are exciting, and we're going to release them to the public when it makes sense for our business, unfortunately. I hate telling you guys no. You'd asked about a rotary clamp. That is not planned on the Model 600. There are some machines that have what looks like a 3-jaw lathe chuck, for those of you who are familiar with what he's asking about. And that thing has usually a dial on it that tells you your rotation. And as you move the tubing, you can rotate to 30, make your bend, rotate to -10, make your bend, and then back to 0. You can have that, rotation of tubing between bends easily. Those are usually found on auto-feeding large table mandrel benders, where they've got a big flat table that feeds the tubing in from the back, and they've got a hydraulic or rack and pinion drive that's pushing the material into the machine, and they've usually got a motor or servo or a stepper that's actually rotating that chuck, that 3-jaw chuck, to position material. There are some manual benders that have it too. Ours doesn't have a lot of room for that inside the manual attachment. Wasn't within the scope of the original design. Not to say we couldn't add it, but we don't have plans to do it. The easiest way to do that is not perfect, because this is a little chunky to fit inside our mandrel, but one of these and the angle cube that goes with it, $77. More than likely the person asking that question already has them. But this sometimes can get in the way of the mandrel a little bit, so that's somewhat inconvenient. You can clamp a second one on and 0 between the two of them and transfer them to get the hardware out of the way. We've also thought of making a much smaller machined one that's basically just a 2-inch ring with some screws in it that would be more expensive, but fit inside the mandrel frame a little neater. Is that all of them? Are we keeping up?
Yeah, I think we're keeping up.
If you guys can, let us know audio and video quality. Our internet speed kind of limits some of our frame rates sometimes, and also let us know if this is valuable to you. What I'd like to do is have a machine here so I can show you guys on the actual machine, answer the questions that way. This whiteboard's really inconvenient to screw into the wall, so I'm not getting a whiteboard for downstairs, but we're always working down there making a lot of noise, so that might not be the best opportunity for a place to shoot video with commentary and narration while we're working.
Would you consider a practice bend sheet included with new benders to fabricate a roller stand for it?
So we wouldn't really have a reason not to do that. I mean, having a library of simple projects would be kind of a fun thing for us to offer. I think most of our customers who would build their own roller stand that would obviously be just like our tradesman or elite cart, but not, it'd be homemade. think the people that would make it themselves probably wouldn't change their mind if we give them plans compared to offering them for sale anyway. A lot of our customers buy our cart because they don't have time to build one. So we're not opposed to having a section of pre-made plans and basically say like, hey, this is like a super easy entry-level project. If you've done a lot of work before and this is a new bender to you, but you've done bending before, maybe you should start with this more challenging project. We could have like a horse swing, just a simple 90-degree bended spring back for people who have never bent at all, and maybe a roller stand for folks who are a little more familiar with it. So that's not a bad idea.
Jeremiah's asking about welding tables. He says they're becoming really popular lately, and if we're going to add anyone to our lineup.
Jeremy, there is already welding tables hidden in various places on our webpage. If you want to go on a Easter egg hunt, go try and find pictures of it. There is one hidden in a few spots. We have already developed and designed one, and we're pursuing a few other kind of options and integration features for that table before we release it to the public for sale. But we've got one, and it is probably the most unique of all of them. Kind of similar to our bender. If you group just 15 tube benders in a room and ask someone who didn't know anything about it to walk in there and pick the weird one, they'd probably pick ours. Same thing with the weld table. If you put 10 welding tables from various companies that we will soon be competing with in a room and said, pick one that doesn't belong, pick the weird one out of this bunch, they'd probably pick ours. It's going to be weird in a good way. We were expanding our business and needed a welding table, and I know Jeremiah, you just opened another can of worms on this huge tangential story, but we needed a welding table, and I wasn't thrilled with the ones that were out there for the money. It's not that they were bad, and it's not that they were overpriced, it's just the value wasn't quite there, and I was like, you know what, we're building one. We built our last one. It's just a plain table. It looks like a barn door made out of steel. And so we actually designed and made a really sweet interlocking one with some really, really fast fixturing features, and our plans are to release that probably around the end of this year, which is delayed by about 18 months from the original plan. But COVID hit, our business got real busy, sales started going up and down like mad, and we decided that was not an important thing to do for the business, is to expand that product line. The important thing to do is take care of our existing customers and our new customers for existing product line, and just make sure we didn't let go of an ounce of our service quality. So yes, Jeremiah, we will have a welding table. If you're about to buy one and you can wait 6-8 months more, please wait. It's going to be pretty sweet, the table we're coming up with. So
No current questions right now.
cool. Our plan is to cut this off just before 4, so we've got a few minutes left if you guys have more questions. I'm surprised you guys didn't grill into something really nasty, terrible, hard to answer questions. I'd totally just decline to answer them anyway. But other cool stuff we tried recently. This is super, super primitive. It's a piece of plastic with a really sweet machine knob that goes on it. This is our die change pin. And we've only sold a few sets of replacement bend wheels, usually to people who call us and blame on their friend. Let me bend it to my friend. He ran it with the die change pin in, which is the pin that goes in the bender that unloads the main axle, so you pull the axle out and drop the die out without holding onto the bend wheels. Makes it way easier for die changes. There's examples of that process on our webpage or YouTube channel. So made this little pin, cool, sexy little machine, anodized aluminum knob, of course made in the USA. I think the plastic might be, we cut it up here, but this is Delrin. It's a super nice, precise, straight, relatively stiff plastic. It's about 10,000 psi in terms of strength. I think that's the ultimate strength of it. So it just explodes. If you put it in the machine and you try to change a die, it works great. It can handle hundreds of pounds of force. And then if you try to bend tubing with it stuck in there in the lock pin, it will not bend your $100 to $200 pair of bend wheels. It will instead just explode this like $4.80 piece of plastic. You can buy them from us. You keep the knob each time, the nice pretty part that's expensive, and you replace the cheap plastic piece each time. So if you guys ever think you might be changing dies or loaning your machine to somebody, or just want another accessory, they're pretty sweet. Anything else roll in, Josh?
Not yet.
Nothing yet. Well, I have a question for you guys. How many of you have entered our July drawing? Because today is the 31st of July, and there is 8 hours left until the 31st is over here in Oregon, Pacific time. That's when the contest closes. Lowest entry we've had this year so far. So
We have a guy asking what led you to develop your bender. He stumbled across us on Google through 4x4 Pirate.
yes, Pirate 4x4, very first place I ever posted it, 10 years ago. What's his name?
His name is Random White Guy.
Random White Guy. Super funny name. I hear people laughing downstairs. So I'm a mechanical engineer. I went to Oregon Tech, which is a little engineering school in Oregon. They teach other stuff too. And I was never going to start a business. I did not want to do business for myself. And I was into off-road stuff and some kind of street car, engine swap stuff. And that thing actually had a roll cage in it. It was a BMW with a SR20 DT Nissan motor in it and a bunch of M3 parts. And my off-road hobbies were just like tow stuff and, tires of lockers, you name it. And that shit had a roll cage in it too. And I kept not having the roll cage because they're so expensive to buy, so hard to make, need specialized tooling. I had bought a welder, grinder, the basic stuff, and I just couldn't buy a tubing bender because every time I saw them for sale, they were like $300. And I was like, this is phenomenal. Don't mind the phones, we're in the office for the phones. Every time they were sale, it was like $300, and I was like, super excited, and I realized it was just the bending arms. And it was not including the die, it was not including the degree indicator, it wasn't including the base, it wasn't including the handle. By the time you're done, it's like $1,200 shipped. I was like, oh, okay, maybe next month. And you go next month, you see it again, oh man, it includes a die, it's just so much, and kept feeling a bait and switch. So I also didn't like that they were horizontal. I was living in an apartment when I was in college. Couldn't really drill holes in the floor of that thing. None of the layout of the machine made sense to me at all in terms of efficiency, space utilization, operation within a metal shop that wasn't a warehouse. And so that set of criteria led me down the road of this machine should bend vertically, it should be portable, and it should be as affordable as possible. And part of that design is stripping all the features out of the die as possible. When you get our dies, they're beautifully machined, they're now laser engraved, drilled and tapped for spacers, all this, and they're still boring. It's just a big disc, basically. It's like a pulley with no clamp on it, and the clamp's separate. And there's 100 reasons why we did that. It does a lot of really cool stuff because of that, but the main thing it does is it makes it easy to machine. And that makes the dies less expensive. Our dies have been $199 for a 180 degree die since we very first launched the bender like 8 years ago. And we don't have any plans to change that. So we have the most affordable 180 degree dies in the industry. It's not supposed to be a big sales pitch, but that's why I designed the bender, was because the stuff that was out there, I didn't like the value per dollar. Just like the weld tables, they're not bad machines. They make nice bends, they work, they take a little more space than I want. But just the value per dollar I wasn't thrilled with. They were just a little bit too expensive for what they were to me, and I just wasn't happy with it. So designed my own, friends wanted it, pretty soon I had a business on my hands, and here I am, not working for a W-2 anymore, so.
Yeah. Can anyone apply for finance on the bender, or do you have to have a shop?
Great question.
Anthony,
I'm going to repeat your question. It's a common one. I think everybody probably heard Josh read it from behind camera, but can an individual apply for financing, or do I have to be a business? We have two methods of financing on our webpage right now. They are PayPal Finance and business leasing. Business leasing, you have to have a business, and your business has to be paying income tax. You don't have to actually be licensed, but you're paying income tax on the business. So it can be a home business, it can be a side gig, but you have to have income. That's for a business lease. That's an expensive way to acquire debt and purchase equipment. If you need to have a lease for tax reasons, that's the way to go. If you're just buying a machine, PayPal credit is one of the more affordable ways to get credit. They're not bribing me to say that. I've had a whole bunch of credit options on the webpage. This one's simple, it integrates well, and we don't even know when you use it. Check out PayPal. It's the same as using your credit card as it is with using finance to us. We just get the money, ship your stuff. But to do that one, you just shop on our webpage like normal, and when you get to the end, instead of putting in the credit card number, you click log into my PayPal account. It's PayPal Express Checkout, that's what they call it. And you just click on the blue box once you get into PayPal to apply for credit. We're also working with a firm. I'm a straight shooter. A firm's greedy. They want a whole bunch of money from you guys to use a firm, and they want extra money from me to use a firm. So I'm negotiating with them, trying to get that on our webpage because it's one more consumer credit option that makes sense. But they're asking for so much money in terms of percentage that it doesn't really make sense for me to offer it. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, I want to. So we're looking into that. I want to have as many options as we can really have without bogging down the webpage, so you guys have as many options as possible to buy the machine in a way that makes sense.
Jaden's asking, you should go over the limits between each bend and the amount of degrees you can do.
Limits between each bend and the amount of degrees you can do is what James asked. Not quite sure exactly what you mean, James, but the first bend you can go to 88 degrees on our standard machine. 94, this is gross, before spring back, total bend before it actually springs back a little bit. You can do 94 on this XHD and HD machines. The difference between a standard and HD is this thing, it's $69. Big deal here is that this makes your ram longer. That's why it bends a little further. Its real purpose was to prevent the pins from bending, but its side benefit is it makes your ram longer. So That's the first cycle bend angle. All dies and all machines made after 2014 will bend 195 degrees. Again, that's before spring back. The point is to be able to get a 180 out of it. So there's no limitation really on bend angle. All the dies do that. And more than likely, James, you were asking about spacing between bends.
S bends and zigzags.
S bends and zigzags. So our Bending 101 article gets into that about halfway through the article. The point of this live video is not to go tell you to go read. So in the machine, that's the main axle where the bending takes place. And then there's 3 holes here for pressure dies. That's the thing that holds the tubing up in the machine because the tubing goes right over the top of wherever that pressure die might be. And then in the front, there's 3 holes for clamp blocks. I think that's the backward thing to go this way. Of course, it's 3.5 inch radius, 4.5 to 6. Easiest way to space your bends is far apart. The distance from here to one of these lines is your clamp block offset or bend offset. Those vary from 5 to 6 3/8 inches, depending on what radius you're bending. And that's the easiest way to just stick the bend out the front, rotate it wherever you want to, and just keep bending, do whatever you want. That's easy, conservative. You don't always want to do that. Sometimes you want to bend closer than that. So in the back here, this is a 6 inch radius hole. This distance is only 3 inches. You can put bends 3 inches apart on a 6 inch radius if there's no rotation between them. So you can basically have a bend stick on the back of the machine and bend up this distance of bend, 0.104 times number of degrees, away from the pressure die, and as you're bending up, it drags that bend in the machine. So the other two have, this is the 6 inch one I was talking about, never mind that, this never happened. This is the 3.5 inch one. So that one's bigger. The 6 inch one has a 3 inch bend spacing. The 3.5 is more like a 6 inch or so minimum in that orientation. But there is other ways to put bends closer together. If you're rotating between them and it's not coplanar, so it's not 180 degrees apart, that's when it gets difficult because you can't rotate like 90 and clamp on that because the bend's going sideways in the machine. But if you want to say zigzag and jog like James talked about, you can have that bend in the back or in the front here. You have it bent down in the machine, and you just put your clamp on there, and you pick one of these holes. Doesn't matter which one. Any hole you can fit it in, and you can just clamp right there and bend. And doing that, you can make bends touching. So we've got some explanation of that in our most recent video, our Bending 101 video. So if you go to RogueFab.com, click on Tech, click on Bending 101, I believe it's the second heading down. The very beginning of that article is the video. So you'll see my logo right there. And toward the end of that short 6-minute video, I show how to just make an S-bend. The easy way, sticking the bend out the front. The other way is in our S-bend video, which is where you have the bend going down in the back. I know this sketch is getting messy. And you drag that bend that's pointing down up to 22.5 degrees of bend over the pressure die into the machine up to the bending die. And again, you can make a zero spacing S-bend that way as well. So those are 2 things that our machine can do because it has isolated clamping, a clamp separate from the bending die, that no other machine I know of can do without having the machine, the clamp machine that bend in the clamp, which is, it's done on Arcolinas and Pines number 2s and stuff like that, and it's like clamps are like $5,000 a piece. It doesn't make any sense for probably anybody watching this video. So. And
KGI Well was asking if we ever are thinking about coming out with our own aero hydraulic versus using Harbor Freight's.
KGI, our own aero hydraulic is not Harbor Freight's, is like 8 feet from me right now. We've probably had 5 different, and I think this is probably our last or second last question, by the way. So KGI, yes, we've done it. We've had 5 of them brought in. The last one was done to our drawings, and we worked with the supplier and got them all done. They were imported, and they haven't shipped to anybody yet or been offered to people yet. We ran into some quality problems. The pumps are a little on the slow side, so we're probably going to offer them as an economy option compared to the Harbor Freight. I really want to get an option that's above the Harbor Freight quality. And we're struggling to find a manufacturer that is willing to quote that, and I'm not sure why. We've got people that can undercut Harbor Freight in price, but no one can overdo them in quality. The Harbor Freight unit's one of the winners at that manufacturer, one of their better tools for the money, but I do wish there was a slightly faster air option that was, Taiwan, Bulgaria, someplace probably imported, but a little above Harbor Freight in quality. We cannot find it. So, is there anything else?
I'm trying to find what green here is trying to say.
Okay. And Josh is trying to clarify.
generic tips and tricks up your sleeve?
Yeah, generic tips and tricks. Other than making the bends beforehand, like making like a 30 and 60 and a 90, the Bending 101, I keep referencing that same video, but the Bending 101 has a lot of really great tips and tricks. You do your layout, put all the marks on your tube. Don't just write bend 1. No one knows what that means. You might when you write it, but you might forget within a minute. Write bend 1 start, and if you can calculate the numbers on the side of the machine, how long a bend is, put the start and end of the bend on the tube. Draw a squiggly line between it, and then when you bend, you'll be done. You might have some oil in the tube, but that'll still be readable, Sharpie, paint pen, whatever. And you'll be able to see, and if that line doesn't match up with where your bend is, like you get immediate concrete feedback that your layout did not match what happened, and you can diagnose why. If you don't put a lot of marks in your tube, you're just kind of going quick and being lazy about your markings, you will have no feedback. Your stuff will be wrong and you'll have literally no clue why. So on every single layout, I've been doing this a long time, on every layout I still put center line of the tube. I write that CL just like I wrote on the card drawing I did. And then I write the space for clamp block 1, I write the beginning of bend 1, I write the end of bend 1, and I've got the same nomenclature every single time. So if I've got a piece of tubing, I'm scribbling on that tubing. I'm drawing the line with the Sharpie. I'm putting CL right next to that in Sharpie. And if my bend starts here, I'm going to put, B1_S for bend 1 start. And then I'm going to take a squiggly line with the Sharpie, and I'm going to put B1 sub E for bend 1 end. And my bend, when I'm all done, I'm likely to have all those lines within the bend. If they're not, again, that's the feedback and what tells me why I'm wrong. And again, the whole key to bending with the RogueFab bender is the clamp block offset. Your clamp block is going to go right out here with a little bolt, and the distance here is your clamp block offset, which you don't have to memorize. It's a sticker on the machine. For 6-inch radius bend, I believe it's exactly 6 inches. But you're going to write that as well. You're going to put a line right there, and you're going to write C1, clamp 1 for clamp for bend 1. And then I draw an arrow with a line, or you put a smiley face there, or a star, or whatever. And when you are loading bend 1 in the machine, and everything's all done, you turn this around because your saw's around the corner of the Monte Carlo you're working on from the bender. You put your hand around the arrow with a smiley face, because then when you load it into the machine, the bend is not where your hand is, it's inside the machine. If you load it backwards, you can still put that line for C1 on the clamp block, it'll be backwards. You'll actually have the bend in your hand, you won't know it, and you'll be putting where the clamp block goes inside the machine up against the bending die. And your bend will be off by about a foot. So we cover some of those tips in the Bending 101 article, but here they are again, drawn in another way. So those are my real tips. We're actually over for time. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. These comments will be visible to us later. So if you do have more questions, you can stick around in this chat, talk with each other, leave comments. But thank you guys for tuning in. If this was valuable, let us know. Shoot us a message, leave us a review, do whatever you need to do. But most important thing, subscribe to us on YouTube. That actually helps us a lot more than you could possibly imagine. Our channel is micro. We want to have good content for you guys. We need a subscribership to actually have that marketing be worthwhile for us to produce. So please subscribe. And thank you guys kindly. Stay cool.
I just ended it.
Thank you.